move on to,
because I turned my thing all the way down yesterday.
if everyone can keep themselves muted until I unmute you. Eric Glasser, you can ask a question. Okay, we'll move on to Alan. New York Times.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
So I'll start off with the basics. What is the technical status of the case? Has it ever been closed? Does it remain open? And have tips started to come in?
Yeah, the case remains open. We never close a cold case, but what we will do is we'll assign detectives and supervisors to other higher priority cases where we're actively pursuing leads that are coming in. What I've done in this case, because of all the leads that are being generated because of the phenomenon that's been on Netflix, is ask that a detective supervisor be assigned to handle all the leads coming in.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, Alan, and I'm going to unmute 206061618.
Hi, we were just wondering, this is from Access Hollywood. My name is Lauren. And I apologize if I just missed this, but have you seen an increase in leads and calls since the Netflix documentary has been released?
And we have. I think the great thing about this that's come out is everyone's home. They're watching Netflix, which means they're home, which means they're being safe. But we've got an increased number of leads. Over the last 4 or 5 days, we've had 6 on average, none credible yet. A lot of theories coming in on who they believe committed this homicide, that they even believe it's a homicide, but nothing credible as of yet. But I think that's why we're being active as we are right now, is because we're encouraging those individuals. If you've seen the series, because of the competition between the people that had the different cat rescues, there was a lot of question and theories of who was loyal and was someone really there as a spy. It's like these individuals constantly had to prove their allegiance to the owner of the different rescues. So what we're hoping is even maybe someone has had a change of heart, maybe a relationship status has changed, anything that will prompt someone to call with a legitimate lead, a piece of evidence, an interview, anything that will help us solve this case.
Okay, Alexandria Rodriguez, I'm unmuting you. Oh, I think you might have dropped off. Oh, no, you're there. Oh, no. Yeah, you've got the floor now. Alexandria, you there?
She says she has no questions.
Okay. Let's do Amy Leobold. No questions? Okay. Anna Commander. She also has no questions. Okay. Keep going down the list to Anon. Dave, I promise we'll get to you. We're just going in order. All right. Photo D. No questions. Okay. A Roth.
Well, we actually had a question regarding the pastor, if we can ask that real quick.
Sure.
Just what will happen if this pastor continues to violate these orders?
Well, unfortunately, I believe he'll find himself under arrest again, and that's the last thing that we want. You know, here under declared state of emergency, and I think I normally don't try to speak for law enforcement, but I think all law enforcement in general is trying to focus on education, educating our population that, listen, it's safer at home. Please distance yourself. It's the only way that we can begin to have the opportunity to resume any type of normalcy in our lives. I'm hoping we have crafted a formalized letter back. We are working with the county to make sure even the small chance that he believes he's feeding people there. So he's an essential business. And we're crafting a letter that will state that if you're an essential business, you have to take items to go, no different than restaurants. I know here in Tampa Bay, and I don't know around the country, I believe it's all the same. They're open, but it has to be to go. And again, I have to express, this isn't about freedom of religion. This has nothing to do with this gentleman being a pastor. This would be no different if it was a gym owner. If it was anyone who is encouraging large gatherings, you're going to be in defiance of this order and find yourself facing the same type of results or outcome that this pastor did.
Okay, we're gonna, next up is Ashley. Okay, we'll move on to Bradley George.
Yeah, Sheriff, just real quick, beyond, excuse me, beyond the leads coming in, are there any other significant updates to this case that have cropped up since this series debuted on Netflix?
There hasn't been, and I have to tell you this, anyone who's watched this series sees how complicated and convoluted their lives are. Don Lewis's life was no different, from his business dealings, I should say shady business dealings down in Costa Rica, to having a girlfriend down there, to funneling money down there in small amounts, taking clothes down there for different individuals, young individuals that upset parents with some of the sexual relationships he had there. I mean, it was extremely convoluted, no different than in the series. The entire case, but no, it almost seems like our investigators at every turn encountered another obstacle. I mean, he had two security guards, and I'll give you an example. He had two security guards, both of them at the front gate of his property. They interview them separately. You have one saying, I haven't seen him in 6 months. You have another saying, I saw him last week. And these are two individuals that work closely together. So extremely convoluted case. The last dealings that we had were back in 2011. We did offer Carol an opportunity to take a polygraph. Everyone else has agreed, and she declined. She said that her attorney told her it wouldn't vindicate her of anything, so she declined to be interviewed. Before that, it was the year before, a detective revisited the case and was able to get DNA from his sons and daughters, which helped us enter into a national database in case we ever have a DNA hit. So we've tried over the years, from 23 years ago, to do everything we can possible, like I said, to try to solve this case. And so far, there's been no evidence. And unfortunately, we weren't in this technological era that we are now. There was no GPS and cell phones, something that probably would have helped us solve this case if it would have occurred now.
Caitlin Mead, do you have anything? Okay, we'll go to Chris from the Tampa Bay Times. Just got to get you off mute. Oh, so Sheriff Chris says that his microphone is not working, but he heard you mention Don Lewis on WFLA this morning. Is there any plan to review the will and check on the signatures on it, or look at the document in any other way? And more generally, will the sheriff's office be reviewing any part of evidence gathered in this case?
Yeah, we have looked at the will, and we had an individual again that proved her allegiance, and she said the will was legit. I have to tell you, based on my experience, and I'm sure all of you will scratch your head too, have you ever crafted a will that said, if I go missing, give all my money to whoever that individual may be? So there's certainly some suspicion surrounding the will. And then one of the people who testified that the will was certified and that she saw people sign the will, she changed her story later on at a later date. So there's a lot of suspicion that surrounds the will. We did have some individuals look at the will, but again, there's just not enough evidence surrounding the will to dictate whether it was falsified or it wasn't. And I'm sorry, you have to repeat the second part of the question.
If we're going to reviewing any other part of the evidence gathered in this case.
Yeah, we'll review a lot of the evidence. We had a meeting again yesterday and sat down and we're brainstorming different pieces. Is there something we're missing? Is there something that we could go back over? And they have 3-ring binders just stuffed with paperwork of what was done from 23 years ago until now. So we've asked our homicide section to review this. And if there's something that we need to revisit, whether it's sending some detectives back down to Costa Rica to talk to some of the people he was in business with, whatever the case may be, DNA evidence, whatever the case may be, we'll certainly always open-minded. If this series generates, hey, you should take a look at whatever the end of that sentence may be, we're absolutely going to revisit and take a look at it in hopes of solving this case.
Okay. And we're going to go over to Chloe with CNN.
Hi, Chad. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. My question is really, have you had a chance to re-interview Carol? And what about giving her a polygraph test? Anything you could do about going back and kind of going over her story again?
She's not really, I don't want to say cooperating as much as she did, but as far as the polygraph, she refused to take one. So we offered her that and she refused. Matter of fact, she was the only person who refused to take a polygraph. But I can't say she's been uncooperative by any means, but certainly we would be required to have some type of evidence, some type of missing piece before we were able to contact her attorney and probably have any positive results or any good fortune of trying to obtain another interview.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go over to Christy.
Hi. Hello, Sheriff. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Good to see the two of you.
To see you. My question is, do you know why did the sheriff never attempt to do a DNA test on the meat grinder? That's one question. And the second one, does Carol Baskin's brother still works at the sheriff department?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. No, her brother has been retired, I think, for like 5, 6, 7 years. He's been retired for quite some time now. To answer your question about the meat grinders, everybody was bringing up the meat grinders. The 2 meat grinders that they had on property that they used to feed all the lions and tigers had been removed several weeks before his disappearance. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't have took them to a different location and used them somewhere else, but the meat grinders had been removed from that location. So there was no ability to test them because they weren't on the property.
Dave Jordan, go ahead. You still there, Dave? Let me unmute you. There you go. You should have it. Okay, Dave's mic is not working, so we will go on to Donald Musser.
Ask Mr. Jordan to type his question, and then I see that Eric Glasser is ready to ask a question too. I guess his mic's working now.
I think so. He says his mic isn't up, but he would like to know if you would address some of the opinion at their disposal. for the option at their disposal if church is not being cooperative? Our options.
No, unfortunately, when someone's under criminal investigation, they don't have to be cooperative. That's their right to plead the fifth. Again, I can't even begin to describe how complicated this case was. Everyone surrounding his disappearance had their own theory. Some people believe it was in a meat grinder, fed it to the tigers. Some people said that he disappeared. Or he was kidnapped, and some people said he was killed in Costa Rica. Some people said it was his son that did it. Everyone had their own theory, and like I said, even with all the theories, I think the detectives and the detective supervisors back then did a great job of utilizing what they had to work with to make the determination that there's just no real charges or evidence to support any type of even probable cause leading to the arrest of any of the individuals surrounding his disappearance. And to date, that still holds true. We're hoping that changes the more people who watch this show.
Okay. Olivia from TMZ asks, how many tips have you gotten this week and how many seem credible? Also, will you dig up under the septic tank that was mentioned on the series?
Yeah, the septic tank was another big point of the septic tank was another big point of contention that people were adamant about. Unfortunately, the septic tank wasn't put in till years later, so it's not even relevant. It wasn't even there during the time of his disappearance.
Okay. And Dave's question is, there seemed to be speculation in the series that the sheriff's office didn't do a thorough investigation because Carol's brother worked for HGSO. What's your response to that?
Yeah, that's just not the case. He had nothing to do with any of this. His only part of all this is the night before, I should say the day of, because it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Carol had went down to the Albertson, a nearby grocery store not too far away, to get some milk for the cats. When she did, her car broke down. Her brother happened to be not too far away on a traffic stop, where he ended up arresting an individual. No, let me back up. It wasn't a traffic stop. He ended up arresting somebody on burglary charges. So he was busy that night. So we can't even we can I guess refute the fact that there's even suspicion that he was a part of it that night. But she went home after that, fell asleep till about 7:30 in the morning. When she woke up, Don was already up saying, "Hey, listen, let's get the truck ready. I want to fill it with supplies and take it to Miami." The two of them were going to fly to Costa Rica. He left, and that's the last time that she says she saw him. I don't know if there was another part of that question that I missed. I'm sorry.
Nope, I think you got that one. I'm just going through the questions. We're going to have everybody, if you have questions, just put them on the group chat. That way we're not unmuting people who are just here to listen and don't have questions. But Eric has another question on the pastor of the church from yesterday. He says, we'll see. The pastor says, we'll see. What options do you have at your disposal? Roadblocks, more arrests, when it comes to if they'll do it again in the future?
We're researching that now to see, under this declared state of emergency and this safer at home executive order, what are our options. So our legal staff, our sheriff's office legal staff, is working with the county attorneys now to see exactly what are our options. Again, not unlike this past week, arrest and getting a warrant or effecting any type of arrest would be a last resort. We're hoping we can get this resolved before Sunday. And again, countless lives are being put at risk again this week. So we're trying to do everything we can to prevent that.
Okay, we'll go back to Carol. Jeff Patterson is asking, Carol claimed Don has flown off in a private plane. Was there any plane ever found to be missing? Is there anything to show that Don may have flown off?
Another great question. There were no records of him chartering a plane or being on any type of manifest going from here to Costa Rica or from Tampa going anywhere. So that wasn't supported. He actually had 2 passports, and neither passport was flagged as him leaving the country anytime surrounding the date of his disappearance.
Next question is, has there ever been a person of interest or a suspect named?
There has not. Again, there just hasn't been any type of evidence to clearly define and allow us to get that reasonable cause that we need to develop to affect the arrest of any individual. in this case. Certainly there's a lot of suspicions. And when you watch this documentary, I'm sure everyone believes that probably some of the same suspicions, but again, nothing ever clear and definitive to say, hey, listen, here's enough probable cause to believe this person is responsible for Mr. Lewis's disappearance.
Will you be interviewing Joe Exotic?
Not at this time. There's just not enough evidence supporting that he had anything to do with this, again, for us to go even conduct an interview.
Okay. Katie Green asks, have you been in contact with Don's family since the docuseries was released? They mentioned they were scared of Carol during the taping. Any guidance on that?
Our detectives will be reaching out to them, but they haven't contacted us during any time. They certainly know, hey, if they heard anything, if they ever feel in fear, to give us a telephone call, 911 ASAP. But we haven't been in contact with them yet. That's on the list of things to do as we're trying to play catch up due to the popularity of this series.
Kate from the New York Daily News asks, how many tips have you received so far? Did anything come from Tiger King that HCSO did not investigate at the time?
No, so far, nothing that we haven't already researched or looked into. We're receiving on average over the last 4 days, 6 tips a day. But again, unfortunately, nothing credible. And most tips are more theories of who these individuals believe committed the homicide, or that the fact that it was even a homicide.
Okay, Business Insider is asking, how do you think that the docuseries portrayed the investigation, and did your office learn anything from the show? Kind of similar to what you just asked. So we'll just take the first part of that question. What do you think of how the docuseries portrayed the investigation?
Listen, any documentary can be swayed for entertainment purposes or to portray individuals in a certain light. That's the beauty of editing any type of film series. So, I think there are a lot of suspicions. And again, those same suspicions stand true today.
Okay. JB from WFLA has 3 questions, so we'll just take it one at a time. First one is, how many resources is HCSO ready to commit to the Don Lewis cold case?
Yeah, if we get some credible leads, we'll dedicate the entire homicide section and beyond. When you talk about a possible homicide or a missing persons case that's 23 years old, there's nothing more important to us than bringing justice to his family who received no inheritance from an individual who, fled. And I think that, again, that raises another red flag of suspicion. Have you ever heard of a case where a wealthy individual fled for whatever the reason was and didn't take their money with them?
Okay, the second question is, while we know evidence is virtually non-existent, could any advancements in forensic science help crack the case?
Yeah, and I think that's why we were adamant and worked so diligently to get a hold of his family members and get their DNA known, that if there was ever a body that was found up or a body that was recovered, whatever the case may be, now that DNA is entered in a national database, that technological advancement would help us today and help us solve that case. But nothing more than that at this point so far.
Next question is, did Carol give a reason why she declined the lie detector test? Did she reject the request directly, or was it through her lawyers?
She denied the request directly and said that her attorney instructed her not to take a polygraph, that even if she passed a polygraph, it wouldn't vindicate her or prohibit the sheriff's office from filing charges at a later date. So she declined to take the polygraph. Okay,
and this will be our last question. It's from the AP. Sheriff, they're asking if you've seen the show and what was your impression?
I did see the series. As you guys are doing the same, trying to distance yourself from others. When I'm home at different various points, usually in the evening time, with my wife and my son, it took us over a course of 3-4 days to try to binge watch it. I thought it was interesting. They certainly spun it for entertainment purposes in certain directions. I mean, raise your hand if you're not a Joe Exotic fan, if you're not rooting for that individual, even knowing that, he was a suspect of some of his own dealings and some animal cruelty charges. So again, I was asked this early this morning, who wasn't a fan of his music? But then someone else told me that wasn't really him singing. But like I said, I think the documentary was good. There was some factual basis in there, but we have to remember a lot of this was done for entertainment purposes. I think that's why all of us are so intrigued and engaged.
Okay, Sheriff, thank you very much. Anybody else? I see you adding some questions now. We have to cut it off. We've been going for a half hour, but feel free to email your questions to PIO Command Center at hcso.tampa.fl.us, and we will answer those questions to the best of our ability. Everybody have a good day.